Good morning. There's this way of living that I keep hearing about. I've tried to forget. I've tried to ignore it. I've tried to pretend that it isn't valuable. It doesn't exist. It's not worth pursuing or it's never going to happen. So better to forget and move on. And no matter what I do, it keeps coming up. And this spot here, this is the closest thing we California surfers have to living this way. And there are a bunch of words that have been used to describe this way, labels, names, and at this point in time, a lot of those words have either lost their original meaning or they now have multiple meanings to the point that even saying them causes confusion. There's no consensus on what the word means. It's a very personal thing, and for me included, when I grew up, I had a different way of viewing these words, and so I'm reluctant to even say them because it doesn't help. And so I'll do my best to describe what I've heard, what's been shared with me, and I've heard it said that once the truth or an idea like the truth or powerful idea comes to someone, once they've heard it, that idea won't rest until it's fully realized in me. And that's how I feel about this thing that I keep hearing about. Like I keep hearing more and more pieces that make it more and more attractive and possible and necessary. And so I can't. It doesn't want to let go of me, or I can't let it go. I don't know how else to say it, but in a way, it's frustrating because I'm like I can see the truth, and yet it feels lonely. It's so far gone that there's no way of getting it back or even a part of it back. Some of the things I've heard is that when people get together and live this way, their language is such that they don't even have words for separation or for divorce. Some don't even have words for I. It's all we, us, our, or they don't even use words like that. It's just in the way of thinking and being that everything is done together. Like doing it any other way would be crazy. So they don't even have words for doing it some other way. I first heard about this stuff during my first divorce. So that was powerful medicine to hear there's a place or a way of living where people don't even have to feel this pain. They don't even have this concept, it never happens. And then I've heard from other people who have lived this way that they don't have words for dis-ease, or dis-ease is two words. There's ease, which is the normal way, the natural way of living. And then there's the dis part where something is off track. And if that's happened, the cure or the solution is to go back to living the way that is ease and that we don't have these problems. And so I've heard people get together and live this way. They don't have cancer. They don't have diabetes. They don't have Alzheimer's. They don't have dementia. They don't have ADD, ADHD. They don't have depression. All the modern afflictions that we all suffer from, they don't have. They never did have. And one of my mentors said, how do you cure what you don't have? They don't need hospitals or doctors or surgery centers or virus centers or labs to create cures for stuff because they don't have the problem in the first place. So to back up a bit, before I came to this way of getting together, this place where we California surfers had, I came into this place with the history of another way of getting together. At Ocean Beach, there's this place that we used to go and park. It was down at the south end of the beach and on the cliff, and it had kind of a remote feel to it. And we'd all just go park on the cliff and surf. And then a lot of us would hang out all day. And so we had this little gathering thing and it was fun. And then if we ran out of food, we'd one wheel up the street to the restaurant or the store, come back. It was a really fun way to hang at the beach all day. And that changed. They put up a bunch of no parking signs, and the interceptors would come by 2-3 times or more a day and give out 100 tickets. And some of my friends got $100 ticket, and that put the squash on that. Now who wants to go to the beach if it cost $100 every time? So, we were all bummed. Another frustrating part is there's no one to turn to ask why this is happening. There's no phone number we can call. There's no agency we don't even know who's behind it or who made the decision or why it's happening. And so they were like fantasizing about coming down with a metal cutting saw and taking all the signs down or, this and that. And we never did it, but it's just part of that frustrating that we had this thing where we could go, this place where we could go and come together and be together. And we lost it. We lost our land, the home for a day that we had, it's gone. And then at another place further down the coast, my cousin and I were coming back from a surf trip way down south. And on the way, we pull up to Santa Cruz and park, and we've got like 10 boards on the roof. And some like teenage kid comes rolling up as soon as we get out of the car, and he's like, "Hey, can I borrow a wetsuit?" The way he said it and the tone in his voice, my cousin and I look at each other and we both say no at the same time. And then after he walked off, we both just had the vibe that he came up to scam us and try to take a wetsuit from us. We're just like, it's just a bummer, left a bad taste. And so when I went down to this other place, get there and recognize one of the Daves. And so we start chatting for a while, and he tells me, "Oh yeah, we used to park our vans and we'd double park on the busier days and just leave the key in the ignition. And then if somebody who was blocked in needed to leave, they would move our vehicle, back their vehicle out, and then swap places and put our vehicle where they were." And I'm like, wow, like this is a different kind of place. This is a place where people are looking out for each other, where there's nobody trying to scam anybody or to write any tickets or try to take anything from somebody. Or it's a very safe place where people are looking out for each other and people have each other's backs, and you don't even have to do anything about it. You can be out in the surf doing your thing, and whatever needs to happen on the beach will happen for you. It's not going to be this punitive kind of out to get you kind of thing. And so I was just like, wow, this is amazing. Like I want more of this. Just the other day, I was listening to a podcast, and the man on there was from a group, and the name of the group is Lakota. And he said the word means it's more than friend or family or something in between. It's someone you would die for, not in a warlike setting, but if you get in trouble or if you need help, I'm there until the end. I got your back no matter what kind of a feeling. And I was like, wow, like how would that feel, to where the name of the group, what we call ourselves is that I got your back. I had to look up what America means, and it's named after the Italian explorer. That was his last name, and a variation of that. And he was the first one that got the cartography somewhat correct. And so that name stuck, but it doesn't have any meaning beyond that. It doesn't even acknowledge the people that were there for 50,000 years before the new guys got there. In the home I grew up in, we had a dining room, a living room, family room. It wasn't until much, much later that I started asking questions like, well, where's the room for grandma and grandpa, or the aunties and uncles? And then when I grow up and become an adult, where's the room for me? And where's the room for my kids? And then where do we go? Can we build another room or lodge or place to rest in the backyard? And it's like, no, that's illegal. This is a single family unit. Are you kidding me? Like, who are we building these habitats for? I look out, and first thing I see is street, and it seems like the cars are the purpose of the building the way we build. Or is it for property value? What value is a property that doesn't house our whole family, that doesn't meet human needs? And another way that we look at modern property is appreciation. Basically, the price going up and up forever. Why would we want to price our kids out of their homeland so they can't even afford to live in the place they grew up? What kind of sense does that make? And then when they can't afford to live there, where are they supposed to go? End up, the moon, the Mars, like eventually there's nowhere left to go. Like, why are we doing it this way? And it's like someplace cheaper. Why is it cheaper there? If we go there when it's cheap, what happens? The price just goes up, and then we keep doing the same thing over and over. Why? Like, where's the sustainability in any of this? What is the point? Some of the mentors and teachers and people I've been fortunate enough to sit in a room and talk for hours on end, and they came from a group of people where they can trace back their grandmas and grandpas and great for tens of thousands, 50,000, sometimes more years, unbroken. There's a story that goes all the way back. They know where they came from. They know how they lived or how they used to live. They know all the stories and all the ways of living, how to survive. They know that the land, how to get everything they need. There's no question or no doubt that how they're living is sustainable, and that it's going to be sustainable forever. And here I'm on some sides of my family, I'm second or third generation immigrant. On other sides, it goes back maybe 10 generations. But on both sides, I don't know the stories back more than 2 or 3 generations. I kind of know where they came from, but I don't know the story. I don't know why they ran or what it was like when they lived there, or like how far back do I have to trace my ancestry to find the place where that was unbroken, or like where did the break happen, and then what did they live like before that? I don't know. I feel lost. I want to know the stories, but it's gone. There's no way to get it back, or at least no way that I've heard of. Every now and then I heard this old way of living. They put an ism at the end of it and talk about it as like these groups of people just mindlessly attacking each other and fighting as a way of life. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Look at how we live. The 20th century was one of the bloodiest and most violent ones in human history. Our kids sit in front of violent, ultra violent video games and practice hours upon hours upon hours upon hours of killing each other, just pointlessly butchering each other. Where's the game where we practice hugging each other and loving each other, learning to communicate and get along and cooperate? Where's the game called renewability or permaculture? Where are the games teaching us how to live in a good way? Where are the movies? I look at the top 10 or 20 blockbuster movies and it's all violent, 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 kill, kill, horror this, horror that. Why are we doing this to ourselves? And I've heard that when people come together, their elders, the older ones, are seen as this library, this treasure of wisdom and knowledge that they can turn to in times of need and have some comfort. Somebody who's been through it all and can say, we got this. I've been through this before. I know what to do. And now how we live here, we throw our old people away. We put them in these death homes. It's like, why? One of my other teachers talked about how the correlation between young people trusting and entrusting all their knowledge and memories to a device and a machine, and our old people no longer being able to remember or recall anything, dementia and that kind of thing. And so those two events happening simultaneously, there's a connection there. And I was like, wow, that's interesting. And to spell it out, the way I see that is like, if we young people stop turning to the old people, well, then they start to go crazy and lose their mind, literally, actually, because they don't need it anymore. They're not valued. And growing up, all this stuff I learned about some of the other ways of living and coming together, and I saw it as backwards. Anything of value was forwards. Technology and new inventions, that was going to make my life better, improve my life. Any affliction or problem I had, the solution lied in the future. And so when I finally was ready, I hit the point where that way of living no longer worked for me. I had the house, the car, the wife, the job, and I just wanted to be somewhere else. I wanted to be outside. I wanted to be in nature. I wanted to be doing stuff with my hands. So when I was finally ready to do things differently, I was defeated by trying to live the modern way, and it failed miserably, and I was miserable. I was finally open to trying something new, which happened to be an old way. And any defenses or reluctance or barriers to me trying it were gone. I was open. So like little by little, one by one, I tried it. I'd heard about no shampoo and no soap, and I was very reluctant to try. But when winter rolled around, I was tired of having dry scalp. I was tired of having my knuckles turn white and my skin and hands be dry and cracking. And so I was like, all right, I'll try it. So I stopped first the shampoo and then the soap, and the dryness went away completely. I was concerned that I would stink, and concerned that I would be like an oily, greasy mess. But eventually my hair and my skin regulated to the point that I don't have that dry cracking thing. I don't stink. All the fears turned out to not be true. And so that opened the door for me to keep going down that path. And next was barefoot. And I couldn't run to save my life barefoot. When I first started, I started with 50 feet, and then next week, maybe 75. And I just kept, eventually getting to the point where I did a Tough Mudder barefoot. It took me a few years to get there. And it was just on and on. Every one of these old ways that I've tried have turned out to be an improvement over how I was living. And so when this idea of coming together, like for real, like living together, I got your back, gathering together, comes up, I'm like, I know, or I believe, or there's got to be the same kind of thing where there's nuggets there, there's gold there for us. And yeah, it's going to be scary, and it might be hard at first, and yet it will improve my life and our lives, and our life together will be better than alone. One of the stories I heard that blew my mind, this author, Sebastian Junger, wrote a book, and he retells the colonist story, the American colonist story, and how there are plenty of cases of the colonists going native and joining the indigenous peoples and living that way. But there's not a single documented case of one of the indigenous peoples voluntarily taking up the colonist life and taking up a modern life. So that just was like, pow. Like for me, that says it all. And then going to Fiji, their lineage is broken. They've been converted to Christianity, and A lot of the old ways are gone, and yet they're a lot closer to their old ways than I am. How they get food and how they build boats and these kinds of things are still there. The language is still there. That was early on in my introduction to these new ways. And when we went to Fiji, I'd been told there was a boat, but I had no clue what kind. And so when we got there, it was this recreated voyaging canoe. And I got to see, we sailed for several day trips on this boat, this double hulled canoe. And then after that, Moana came out and kind of filled in the piece of the puzzle for me. And I read the book on wayfinding and the story of how they recreated these canoes. I was like, wow, like really? They were able to navigate the entire Pacific without any instruments, without any gear, just using the stars and wisdom. And yeah, it just blew my mind. A lot of the things I saw didn't really sink in until years later. One of the things I noticed but didn't really notice was how none of the children in the village cried. There were no tantrums, timeouts, there was no disciplining the kids. They just seemed happy as can be. And the villagers were happy to pass their kids to us and let us carry them or play with them or whatever. They had no like stranger danger. There was no concern about anything happening. It was such a safe place as a trip. I've been to tons of parties and gatherings here in America and in California. And we're lucky if we go an hour before there's some meltdown or some kids screaming or everyone's freaking out and the party ends. And there was a huge contrast to what I saw in Fiji. We had an elder talk about his struggle with diabetes and how when he went back to the traditional diet, it was gone, just completely disappeared. And I've heard the same thing with ancient Hawaiians. There's like the poi guy and how he's trying to reclaim that old way of living. And when people go back to their traditional diet, the diabetes and the obesity go away. I've heard story after story like this. I have yet to hear any story that disputes this. I've heard people say, oh, we can't go back. That way is gone. And I'm like, well, what does going forward look like? I mean, if I plot on a graph of say the last 1,000 years or even 10,000 years and look at where we are today and then keep on going forward, I mean, what is it like destruction of the entire planet? I mean, all the species go extinct. We pave over every inch of the earth. We completely overfish and kill the oceans and every place to get food. I mean, how is that forward? Even if we can go there, how are we going to survive? There's this old story, the frog doesn't pollute the pond that it lives in, like, well, we're polluting the pond we live in, and how far do we get to where we can't undo it or to where there's no food left? What then? Or we just become these machines and shoot ourselves into space and go colonize more planets? Why would we want to spread that around the universe? Like, how is that good for anyone? I'm wondering, how do we go back? At least if we know where we came from and know the whole truth, and then if we choose to reject it, fine. But if we're completely ignorant of the old ways and we haven't even tried living that way, like I remember one time I said to my mentor, we have nothing to lose. And he instantly turned to me and said, we have everything to gain. That different way of seeing, that abundant way to where everything's possible. And instead of this negating everything and no and dis and that kind of speaking, it's like, yes, like let's reclaim this. Maybe the only way forward is to go back. Chris Ryan in a lot of his books talk about, maybe it's Joseph Campbell too, the power of myth or the hero's journey, how we go out and on this journey, see the world, live all this stuff, learn all these things, and then come back home and see it for the first time. Some people have said the Garden of Eden, the biblical, mythical, however we want to talk about it, way of living was the hunter-gatherer way. And then when we moved into modernity, we were cast out of it. Now that we've gone out and seen what happens when we live the way we're living now, maybe we'll start thinking about how we can go back, or at least bring the back forward.